Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
The title of this video is misleading, but it's not that I don't want you guys to mod all-wheel drive cars or anything. It's that it's really what we're going to touch on is how difficult it is to find the parts for them and stuff. So mostly where you're going to find the difficulty finding parts for the cars like this, if you're modding one, is by the way, this is the Chrysler 300, not the RT. Where you're going to find the difficulty is mostly in exhaust components. So you can do a catback exhaust from pretty much any other Mopar product. Chargers, I think Challenger exhaust will fit it. It might not. I'm not sure, as long as it's not a manual transmission. So catback exhaust, that's easy to find. You know, and you can actually find some pretty decently priced ones. I think SLP loudmouth tubes or systems are anywhere from $500 to $600, almost $700, you know, which is pretty reasonable for a name brand catback exhaust. 2.5-inch catback exhaust at that. Really, your big issue here is headers and mid pipes. You're really limited on your choices of headers. You can find some, you know, long tube headers or full length headers, whichever you prefer to call it. Your big issue is the mid pipes, really, because they go around your transmission and transfer case. On a two-wheel drive car, they're easier to route because they don't have as much stuff to go around. On an all-wheel drive car like this, they go around a transfer case. They have to, you know, the big thing, it's not really what they have to go around, it's that they can't go underneath any further underneath of the car, otherwise you'll be bottoming it out and dragging your exhaust on the ground or your mid pipes on the ground. And you know, you do that enough times, eventually you'll create a hole or break it off, or you know, problems you don't want to have. There are a few choices. I can't really name off all of them, but I know JBA makes a direct bolt-on mid-pipe for all-wheel drive cars with high-flow cats, but they're pretty pricey. They're, you know, you can get some catless two-wheel drive mid-pipes for a couple $100 from most brands, but you know, there's long tube with mid-pipe options as well. You know, I think American Racing makes one, but they're $1,700. So don't mod scared, but also don't jump into something that you don't think you can afford or don't think you can do at a reasonable price. Because, you know, keep in mind, not everybody can just put their own parts on like we do. You know, most people have labor costs and stuff that they have to factor into the price of their parts. So, you know, $1,500 headers and mid-pipes could turn into $3,000 headers and mid-pipes really easily. You know, and $3,000 for headers and mid-pipes to a lot of people like us, where we're working class guys with 5.7 Hemis and stuff. You know, we don't. We don't go throw money at, you know, $3,000 at headers and just expect, you know, to be able to have that kind of money laying around like a lot of people do. You know, a common misconception about this car specifically, it's underneath, and I will post a picture of the underneath of it so I can kind of show you about the mid pipes. Underneath, it is almost exactly the same as a Charger or RT. Underneath, above, everything else is different. The interior is different. The body panels are different. The wheels are different. You can't just throw a set of wheels on this. A lot of the guys would like to just be able to bolt on a set of 20-inch wheels on these cars. They're 19-inch wheels, and the tires for these aren't cheap either. That's another thing I want to allude to. But you can't, because the backspacing is different. You got to have a positive offset and a backspacing of at least, I believe, a minimum of 30 or 27 millimeter backspace, it's a lot for a car, but it's not a lot for an all-wheel drive car. So, I also work in the we'll say the automotive maintenance industry, so I kind of know the difficulty of finding the right rim for the right car. You just can't slap any old rim on there without a spacer and have it work without rubbing or whatever. A real big problem with the 19-inch tires that I was alluding to earlier, it's difficult to find a 19-inch tire that's going to fit your car, have the right load rating and speed rating. Find an RT all-wheel drive rim, and again, it's difficult to do. It's because they didn't make a lot of them, and the ones they did make, people hang on to them for quite a while because they're really good cars. I've not had a complaint about my car yet, aside from some things you can't control, like a cracked windshield and stuff like that. But that happens with rain and hail. Other than the all-wheel drive car being difficult to mod, it's the same as a Charger. It's the same as a two-wheel drive 300 with a Hemi. The big difference is that you have an additional differential and additional drive shaft, and about, if I calculated it right, my car weighs about 200 and some pounds more than a regular 300 300S or 300C of the same year. But the advantage is I can actually, in a drag race from a dig, I can launch harder without worrying about traction as much as a two-wheel drive car. The benefit of all-wheel drive, for me, being a more drag race oriented person, I'm a huge drag race enthusiast. Basically, the point of this video is, not everybody who has an all-wheel drive car will be able to mod the same way as people with RTs or 300Cs and 300Ss that are rear-wheel drive only, or even Challengers. I can't exclude those because a lot of the guys are taking Challengers to pretty high extremes from the RT trim package. Even I've seen people with RT trim packages go pretty high with Challengers and even Chargers. But I haven't seen a lot of all-wheel drive cars. There's a couple on YouTube. I can't remember the name of the channel. I know for a fact there's one. I don't know what it runs in the quarter or anything like that, but it's an all-wheel drive Charger. It's I believe it's from the same body family as my car. I believe it's LX. Excuse me. Body family. It's all-wheel drive, and it was making like 620 at a pretty high DA. So it can be done. You can mod these cars. It's just you have to be not necessarily careful, but mindful of where and what you're buying, because just because it says it works for a Chrysler 300C or a Dodge Charger RT, keep in mind you may have an all-wheel drive car, and if you do, you have to watch the parts you buy for them, at least as far as underneath goes, because even the oil pans on these are slightly different. They're not exactly the same. But underneath of the car, the parts you buy, you have to be mindful for, because there's a lot of websites that list a part for a Chrysler 300C or a Dodge Charger RT But it doesn't work for the all-wheel drive, and and it'll give you a tiny little disclaimer at the very bottom of it and stuff. It's not necessarily a complaint. It's more of a kind of a healthy warning, or a heads up that just because you buy a part for an RT or a C, um, don't be fooled. Basically, don't be fooled by the fact that you're buying it for your model of car, but you're not buying it for the submodel of the submodel, which is all-wheel drive. So uh, you know, uh, by all means, if you can and you have the know-how, or if you think you have the means to throw the money down for it, please. I want to see videos of these cars being modded. I want to see more all-wheel drive cars being modded like this. I don't see a lot of them. I look everywhere. I'm on YouTube constantly researching this stuff, and not just YouTube, even on forums. I'm on Facebook groups and stuff. I don't see a lot of it, and I don't think that the aftermarket has quite hit us all-wheel drive guys quite as hard as it has like the two-wheel drive versions of these cars. It just, to me, it could be more in our area of exhaust from the cat forward and back. However, like I said, almost all the two-wheel drive catback exhausts will work with these cars. There's almost no difference whatsoever, and what difference there is, it's very negligible and manageable with little to no modifications at all. The big thing is, again, and I will post a pic, it's the mid pipes. You just can't find them. When you can, it's in a part of a kit. It's you can't separate it. You can't just get the headers or just the mid pipes. And even the headers on these, they're very different. The long tube headers are very different. The big thing is that there is an extra drive shaft on an all-wheel drive car, as most of you well know. And your passenger side header has to come down right on top of, or over, or beside that drive shaft with minimal clearance. I mean, there is not a lot of room for that header to come down near it. And for me, that's an issue, because I don't like banging exhaust. I don't like stuff rattling or grinding. I don't like to hear my car make noise going down the road other than exhaust note and the occasional tire whine from the highway. So clearance on your headers for an all-wheel drive car is a major issue. You can't just throw a set of two-wheel drive headers on here and call it good. They're not going to fit. They will hit. I've seen it. I've been under my own car. I have measured. I've done everything I could to research the possibility of finding headers for this car. It's next to impossible, and if you do, they're very, very expensive. You're paying a lot of money for them. I'm not bashing the companies who make them. They do take a lot of engineering, and they do take a lot of time to make that additional length of mid-pipe, I guess you can say, because it does have to go around the transfer case and not underneath of it. So, it's difficult to find parts for an all-wheel drive car. Essentially, is the premise of this video. When you do, you're paying a premium for them, and and if you don't have the mechanical expertise to put them on yourself, you're paying a premium for labor too, because of the difficulty of putting the part on the car. Now, as far as stuff above, from the oil pan up, minus the headers, It's not as difficult. I've been under the hood of my car numerous times replacing things on the front of the motor. There is 100 times more room than I've had on past vehicles. I had a Jeep WJ, a 2001, little to no room. I mean, you're bashing your knuckles just on everything. I mean, I was changing plugs on it. I busted my knuckles so many times on that thing. Drive shafts are expensive for those, and you know, if you mod them in any way and put any kind of horsepower down, you know, like I built the 4.7 and it not too extreme. It was maybe like 280 to the ground after I was done, after everything. You know, they don't put much down to begin with from the factory. You know, you're lucky if you get 150 out of them onto the ground. Mine was not all-wheel drive being a V8 though. It was selectable. So